Oh, welcome everyone. Welcome back. It's good to see you. If you were here yesterday, we have a chat box that's in the bottom toolbar. And then the Q&A box is what I'll focus on, which we're going to get to after we go through the defect that we're going to talk about today. You can post questions in there at any time or along the way, and it just helps me to keep track of them. So, going forward here, if you're, especially if you're new, but even if you were on yesterday, I still want to know where everybody's from. I might have missed you yesterday. And if you're new to my content, put new. So Deirdre's or D, you were here yesterday. I saw your name, St. Augustine. Oh, you're a holistic realtor. That's great. We need more of those. And I love St. Augustine. If I was going to live in Florida, I think it would be St. Augustine. Ellie is from Central Virginia and she is new. And so we were excited to see that we had quite a few people signing up that had never seen our stuff before. So that's very exciting for us because our mission is to create awareness around all this. And so thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Gabby is in North Carolina. I hear you guys might be getting snow soon this week. At least that's what I heard. I hope it's not going to be too bad. Anyway, let's get started. I'm Cheryl. I'm Cheryl Ciecko, and I've been licensed architect for over 25 years or 35 years. But I learned about mold the hard way when my own family's health was affected. We were affected in 2005 when one of my children was 10, and she ended up having asthma, full-on inhalers at home and in school. And I didn't have any idea that it had something to do with our house. She started having migraine headaches, couldn't get out of bed. I did get an invitation to a CEU program for my license as an architect, and the program was on mold in commercial buildings. That was February of 2005. And I went and I had light bulb moment after light bulb moment in this presentation that you could be sick everywhere you go because of where you're sleeping. And that it wouldn't necessarily just come on. Now, we were in a house we lived in for 6 months at that point. I inspected it. It was good. It was an older house, but she didn't get sick like when we walked in the door. She was sick everywhere. She was sick at school. She was sick at her friends' houses. She was sick outside when she was playing. Now it got to be, I think, around February when the migraine started. And honestly, a divine intervention. It was by the grace of God that I ended up at this presentation, and that you could have mold in your ductwork, which never occurred to me. We had metal ductwork. And I came home from that presentation. I took the cover off the ductwork, the cover off in the living room, the vent, and it was so disgusting. And that was the beginning of our journey. Now, that being said, I did sleep in a basement bedroom when I was in high school with wall stuff on the outside, all kinds of bad things. So I'm sure I've been exposed many times. But anyway, that journey, especially with my family starting in 2005, my husband got really sick in 2010 with Lyme disease, and I had it too. But that whole journey has turned me into a perpetual student on all things building science. So I have to do continuing education every year. And starting in at the beginning in 2005 at that event that I went to, all my continuing education has been on building science because I realized there's a lot to know here that could affect my family. And my mission now is to help you, everybody, whether you are a doctor, whether you are a contractor, whether you're an architect like myself or an engineer, or whether you're just a homeowner, that we can all understand the details. It's not rocket science, honestly. There's important details that we need to know, that we need to look for so that we can make informed decisions on whatever our unique situation is. And that's my mission. My family is thriving now. So just I'm really blessed, and I'm really happy to be saying that. That doesn't mean that we aren't vigilant all the time and that we don't have setbacks. And my goal is to help you avoid costly mistakes, costly healthcare issues, which I wasn't aware of, even though I was a licensed architect back in 2005. Check out day one if you haven't. Day one, which was mistake number 3. We're counting up to the number one most common defect that I see. And we started at 3 yesterday. We're on 2 today. So I hope you were able to join us yesterday, and look for your emails and make sure you read your email, because there could be things that I say that are important that might be in the email that you might want to know. And then you have until Saturday night to watch the replays. Saturday night at midnight Eastern time. And we do have time for Q&A again today. We did to yesterday, and that was really good. Again, there's a Q&A box, and you can put your questions in there. Also get your chat box open if you're just come on recently. And remember to stick with us, because after the 3 days, on that same email, there'll be a checklist summary that's coming out. But before we dive into today's mistake, I want to share something important. I consult with hundreds of clients every year, 200 to 300 every year, unique clients, mostly virtually. And so we're talking about thousands by now, both new construction and existing homes. And it's crystal clear to me that mold and water damage is not going away. We're not beating this, but we're seeing more and more mold and water damage in new homes all across the United States, Canada. I have clients in Australia, in the UK, in Europe. It's not a problem that's specific to any one area. It's a problem that is growing, partly because I think of the sustainability movement and tightening up our buildings and still building them the same way. But our buildings are very complicated, and this is a lot of unintended consequences of good ideas, I think, that we think something's going to work, and then maybe it isn't working in reality. And also something that I would call conventional wisdom, which we think, oh, of course that's okay to vent your crawl space and it'll be great, and just have the dirt down there. That kind of conventional wisdom, which is not serving us well. Sounds right on the surface oftentimes, but like even being airtight, we do want to be airtight, but that creates a complex environment in our buildings and is creating moisture in ways that older buildings that were drafty could dry. Now, just a tiny, tiny moisture mistake that is collecting moisture in a very tight building can lead to pretty toxic mold and severe health effects. So I believe it's critical that the home building process pays attention to moisture management from the beginning to end. And the best way that I found to do that is talk to the people who care, the people who are getting sick or realize that the potential for being sick is real, or that are helping other people. My mission is to help other people avoid the challenges that my family went through and the amount of research that I had to go through, so I can fast track you. And that's what I do in all my classes, to the right answers. So let's get to today's mistake. And it's a big one. Mistake number 2 is waterproofing connection mistakes, also known as flashing mistakes, or no flashing at all. So water management flashing mistakes. And what I see that this will cause is some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday. So, but some different things. So walls and foundations being stained. High humidity can be from stored water in your enclosure anywhere. So if your AC, air conditioning, can't dehumidify well, and air conditioning, that's part of the job of air conditioning, is to pull out humidity. If you can't get your humidity down with your air conditioner alone, especially when it's cooler outside, then there could be that you have a big source somewhere and it's not natural. If you have your heat on and you can't get your humidity down, you absolutely have a moisture burden somewhere, because heat is extremely drying. We try to, a lot of us in cold climates feel like we need to run humidifiers because the air gets so dry. But yeah, anybody who's running heat and still has high humidity, there's something there for sure. Mold in attics, garages, ducts, mini splits. So any kind of HVAC system. Near plumbing, mold showing on air testing and ERMI tests. Just know that those tests can have false positives or false negatives. False negatives are more common, which means we have a negative result, but we do have mold. So there are some things you can do to have a false positive, but it's more likely that you'll have a false negative. So just know that if you have negative mold testing scores and you have health issues in your family and everything else seems to be checking the box that you might have mold, don't discount the mold because your testing didn't find it. If you have people who are sick in your family, even if their sickness was before you lived in that house or something that is hereditary, everything can be made worse when the air we breathe is toxic. The mold in the air is a immune system burden. So it can be all kinds of things, but we need our immune system. If you're in snow country and you have icicles that form during the winter from snowmelt, that can lead to all kinds of hidden water damage in our buildings. Siding degradation prematurely, windows showing sign of mold, condensation at the wintertime, because that's not normal. You need to lower your humidity for sure. Rot or mold will come with that. Doors sticking. So I did have a plumbing leak at one point in my history, And the way we found it was that it was the winter. It's like 30% relative humidity in the rest of the house, and the bathroom was 70. And the reason I checked the bathroom humidity was because the door was sticking. So check your humidity room by room, and in some cases down close to the floor or in corners near exterior walls, under windows, and see if you get a significant difference in your humidity readings. Stains on stucco or brick, always a sign. If it rains, if you're a place where it's raining this time of year or other times of the year, go outside immediately after the rain stops and look at your building. I recommend taking pictures of your building with high resolution, upload them to your computer, and look at them later, because the buildings will often tell you stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily see, but that you can see it in a picture. And that's why I can do virtual consulting. What's really happening in these situations is that the water's getting behind our building materials and getting into our building envelope at connection points. That's where the flashing that we're talking about goes between different materials. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is details. Details matter. So we want to design all of our openings and connections with materials to create proper flashing, it's called, and to make sure that it's installed correctly. You can use the right materials and not do it correctly, and you can make problems much worse. We cannot let moisture management details be an afterthought. And that's what I do see happening more and more. So what is flashing exactly? It's a thin material, could be metal, it could be plastic, could be rubber, could be flexible, it could be rigid, but it's used to prevent water infiltration at vulnerable areas of a building. So that's the high level. It provides a diversion, and sometimes it deflects water, and often a seal to protect those vulnerable areas. So oftentimes it's got a bend in it so that it's protecting a corner, for instance. But we need that to put water in a place that it needs to go and not end up putting it into our building enclosure. That's what I mean about installation. And it's often where different materials intersect or where there's openings in buildings and other areas. So all these areas become very vulnerable because there's a change from one material to another or an opening. The materials of flashing could also be copper, galvanized, and a lot of them are metal, galvanized steel, lead, aluminum, stainless steel, bituminous materials, which are like, and also even plastic, but they're like ice and water shields is often a really good flashing material. There's a lot of different products that companies that make that, but it's a sticky back, flexible, rubbery material. It's kind of expensive, but it's worth every penny, especially when it has self-sealing properties, which means if someone puts a nail through it, it seals around the nail. So it's a good idea to use both types, truthfully. And so there's two types of flashing in bigger picture. One is the internal flashing that you won't see. You'll never see it on a building. This catches water that has got into a wall enclosure or an assembly, part of an assembly behind our finishes, and it directs the water back out of the wall. You'll find this behind masonry and brick, definitely. So when you see the weep holes at the bottom of a brick wall, that's usually should have flashing behind it that's directing the wall, any moisture that's in that wall cavity to come out at the weep hole. Stucco would be another one that has some flashing that's required, and drainage management, siding, where you come down to siding and then you have a horizontal band board, there should be flashing there. Under roofing materials, where roofs hit the fascia board, the trim board, and where roofs hit gutters, those are really common places for water to leak. But also where we could have ice dams from those icicles, where water could be pushing up under the shingles and freezing and tearing the shingles apart and then ending up into our walls, never to be seen by us. That's why I said look for icicles in cold climates. The big way where flashing should be, it's between dissimilar materials and openings. So some examples of that would be the wall to the foundation. We want to seal up that seam. We want to have some flashing there. We don't want to have water behind our walls finishes like siding to end up coming into our wall in any location there. And another place would be where the roof meets a wall. This one has many layers to it, or it should, but you should see metal. They're called baby tins typically between where the roof and the wall meet. You should never see your finished wall material coming down and touching your roof. It's a bad sign. Gutters and gutters at the walls. There's something called kickout flashing that's needed there. And we have a lot of problems with that because the water comes flowing off the roof and doesn't end up in the gutter at the wall and ends up flooding the wall there. And we have a lot of damage there. Chimneys are notorious for flashing damage because they're cutting a hole in the roof, and there needs to be proper flashing and something called counter flashing. Usually, if it's a masonry chimney, that waterproofs that really well, because not only can it be rain and a ton of rain, and this chimney is blocking the flow, or it could be snow that's sitting up against a chimney in that location. And there's even flashing in the chimney cap. And I know it's really easy. I'm sure if you look around, you'll see kinds of chimney damage, especially if you have brick in a brick neighborhood where there's degradation due to poor flashing of chimneys. Roof valleys take on a lot of water, and intersections between where roofs change planes, those need special attention. Changes in finish materials, like say you come down with siding and then you're going to go to stone, there should be flashing in between those two things. Or brick, where two materials come together, or where you come siding coming down to like a horizontal band board or a different detail. So those things all should have flashing. Parapets is another place where flashing can really easily go awry. And those of you in warm climates where we have flat roofs, which are really sloped, but they're flat. They look flat. There's 2% slope. All flat roofs should have a slope, so I hesitate to say that word. But lots of times those buildings in some of the Arizonas, New Mexico's, maybe Nevada, that you have this like a parapet wall and you can't see the roof at all. And so that wall takes on a ton of water, and there's special flashing details for those parapet walls. That's what that's called. Other places in walls, roofs or foundations, you can have windows and foundations that can leak. Heads, sills of windows and doors, also vent openings. So when we go to have our kitchen exhaust vent outside, which we want to have it do, how's that flashed? Our plumbing details, like the soil stack going through the roof, that needs to be flashed properly, and it can't be an afterthought that the roof is all done and now we got to cut a hole for the plumbing pipes, the plumbing vent. That should be thought of before the roof goes on, because there's a lot of interlacing of the materials to get them to work well together. Electrical openings, light fixtures and exterior walls can leak. The outlets can leak. Other roof openings like skylights can leak. Scuppers is a way that water gets out of a flat roof on a scupper or off of a lanai or a deck of some sort of balcony can have a scupper. Notorious for leaking, needs proper flashing. The other one that I would add is deck attachment. So we have a deck attached to our home. That's another very common leak location, and there's special flashing details that need to be used to get the water that's running down the wall to not go behind or in between the ledger board of the deck and end up in our wall or degrade the deck itself. So there's a lot of critical considerations in addition to just all these places. So one, there's places where the flashing needs to move and flex. Some materials can't be exposed to UV. I mean, even house wrap, every house wrap or water resistant membrane can't be exposed to UV indefinitely. And so the UV of the sun will actually degrade those materials. Beware of dissimilar metals that could be touching. So you have a stainless steel, maybe a stainless steel nail, and they're putting it in a copper flashing. Something like that will cause what's called galvanic action, which is destruction and corrosion of both metal pieces very quickly. It's chemistry at work, destroying your flashing. So what's important in building a building or in big renovations or remodeling is to design and highlight where do we need flashing? All the flashing. Where is it important that it has to go? And to be highlighting it so that your contractors know there's something special we have to do here. Follow your manufacturer instructions. All these products that we talk about, every kind of siding, there's the Masonry Institute, there's cement siding, there's wood siding, there's vinyl siding, there's all kinds of materials, there's panel products. They all have details on how to flash them and keep the enclosure waterproof well. And know that every building code says that the installation instructions are important to be followed and are part of the code, even though the code isn't going to list everybody's installation instructions. Know that caulk, which is part of sealing up and waterproofing our buildings, has a very limited lifespan. It gets exposed to the UV of the sun and it degrades, and it is rarely effective on its own. Its lifespan is roughly, I would say the max is 10 years. And we all know how fast time flies, but in some places, depending on your environment and how much sun it's getting, it could be 5 years. And so, and then when it's at its lifespan, it's going to start leaking. And so that should be part of an assembly, but not the only way we're keeping water out of our buildings. The bottom line with all this is that most builders know, they think they know how to flash buildings properly, but honestly, because of the complexity that I'm explaining to you of all the different places, I see multi-million-dollar homes with experienced contracts that have poor flashing. And I have a presentation that I did that has a commercial strip mall in it showing damage from poor flashing. So again, it's not just homes, it's commercial buildings too, including every kind of commercial building, offices, schools, all these dorms and colleges that are really nasty. Yeah. So how we flash and the details for flashing really do matter. And the details are everything when it comes to success for good air quality. Now, here's what I want to I want you to understand after we've talked about mistake 3, which is site drainage, and mistake 2, which is flashing, moisture details mistakes. These aren't obscure problems. Site drainage and flashing mistakes are happening in our homes in every price range, every single climate, with contractors who have decades of experience. And sometimes with architects involved. So I do think architects are a good way to go to have an architect involved, because we, from our license, have to be cognizant and protective of water management issues, but it's tough. Today, we've talked about just a few of the dozens of connection points on every home where flashing is critical. And each one has its own proper installation method. So like kick out flashing. There's diagrams that can be like 7 pages of first this, then this, then this, but it's important. And it is important to get those things right so we don't have to go redo them. And the damage that can happen when they're not done well is horrific, super expensive, and definitely will have often has health impacts. So, and we haven't even uncovered mistake number 1 yet, which will be tomorrow, our next one. So this is exactly why my Build a Safe Home program exists. Let me tell you just a little bit more about what's inside. I'm not going to go through all the details I did yesterday. What I know from working with so many hundreds of homeowners related to water damage and mold problems since 2016. So I've been licensed long before that, but I've been doing this job since 2016 when I created my website, avoidingmold.com, after we had Lyme disease. And I realized how many people with Lyme were affected by mold. And I was in the Lyme groups because we had Lyme. So it's part of my story. The ones who succeed aren't necessarily the ones who have the biggest budgets. So know that. It is a way of thinking. The people who succeed are the ones who ask questions, the ones who have a detective mindset, the ones who know what red flags to look for, and question things, even though somebody may be really confidently telling you that this is going to work or that this thing doesn't matter. I mean, I had my contractors telling me the tape not sticking was all going to be fine. It was all going to stick later when they covered it with siding. And I chuckled and I said, no, we're taking that down. But a quick note before I go further on the course, definitely my course is not for everyone. If you're someone looking for a quick fix, or if you're looking for someone just to tell you what materials to buy, this isn't it. I do have a lot of information about materials, but that's not my primary focus. There is no easy button. I wish there was. Honestly, I really wish there was. But then we wouldn't be in the situation if there was, because everybody would be fixing it. This is for people who truly want to understand the why behind mold prevention, and are willing to invest time in education to save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in remediation and rebuilding costs later when something gets overlooked. If that's you, you're in the right place. It certainly is me. Yeah. We have to be detectives. We have to look at stuff and say, does that make any sense? And think for ourselves. So as I said, I'm not going to go through all the details on the different modules. I did that yesterday, but I do want to highlight Unit 4 and Unit 5. in our Build a Safe Home course because Unit 4 is on roofs and Unit 5 is on walls and openings. And that's because that's where we go deep on today's topic of flashing. In the wall unit, especially, we have master assembly. We talk about the rain screens. We talk about stucco systems and insulation, and we talk about window and door installation in great detail. I have a whole module just on that with pictures. Remember, everything I do is with pictures. I'm talking to you guys today without pictures, and it's really hard. I want to talk with my hands and I want to show you something. But in the course, be sure that I'm a little picture in the corner and that it's very fast-paced courses with lots of pictures, lots of diagrams, lots of images, and resources for you to look further into resources that I use for more discussion that I couldn't possibly put into the course myself if that particular item is interesting to you or relevant. In the wall unit, that's where a lot of the mistakes are happening, are these openings. And this is where the magic happens too with the solutions, or where disasters occur if we don't do it. So those are really important modules in our course, and flashing, if not done right or overlooked, can be a tremendous disaster. We do have the interactive element, so there's live Q&A. I will mention that. That's where I get to answer questions live for people in the course who are really good students and have good questions. We have several private community groups. One is an app, and my team monitors the group so that you're not just getting me and my eyes on it. If I'm not paying attention, someone else on my team is, and they're going to alert me that there's a question that needs to be answered. When you join Build a Safe Home, you join a network who wants you to ask questions. Most builders don't want you to ask any questions. They don't want you to notice anything, but I do, to help protect your investment. We have additional bonuses that are available now, over $800 in value. Moisture Matters is a 1-hour webinar on the fundamentals. I actually do recommend that you watch that first because that's going to be the basis of everything we talk about. We offer the Before You Buy or Rent. It's a 3-hour, 3-part video series that we sell separately also, but you can get it for free with the course. And it's 3 hours of training, really, looking at pictures and me discussing. You look at a picture and you think, I don't see anything there. And then once I point it out to you, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it on the gas station. You'll see it at the hospital or the medical building you walk into. So that is a disclaimer for that one, is that once you start seeing this stuff, you're going to see it everywhere. But that knowledge is power. That knowledge is power so that we can spot water damage and mold either early if it's in our own buildings, or to avoid buying something that isn't good or staying somewhere. I look at the pictures of the Airbnbs we're going to stay at, and I'm looking for water damage and mold evidence just in the pictures for those. You get 1 year free in our Dwellwell Institute. That's our subscription community, where the app is, where I'm always checking my app and to see if there are any questions there. And inside that portal, we have more than 60 other videos. We have interviews with people we've brought on. Some of the most compelling ones recently have been on HRVs and ERVs. Had a couple people talk about that. One person with a new invention on that I think is worth paying attention to. Details like, what kind of gutter guard should I have? I mean, that's in there. So that's all free with enrollment. And the content in the course alone, I'm very proud of it. It's worth more than $5,000 for sure. And then you're including the monthly Q&A. So that's about 6 weeks. You can get through the whole thing, but you may need to go back, and you have lifetime access. And then when we add stuff, and we have constantly been adding stuff, you get that too. So there's no reason to wait. As we add more and more stuff, we do raise the price periodically. So it's never going to get cheaper, and we're going to keep adding stuff, and it's only going to get better and better. And it's a great place to have it as a resource for you going forward. So, but the most important thing is you get confidence. You get a deep understanding of the building process and the building details that are going to go into your building that you're going to be building or into your remodeling. And you become an informed client who can ask good questions and make decisions with your team to protect your investment. You get awareness. That's the second one. Knowledge to understand the risks and make choices. I mean, some products and some things we're going to choose might have a risk to it. But at least we know what the risk is. And then over the life of the building and our time with the building, we know to pay attention to those things. And finally, you get support, direct access to me through the monthly live Q&As and our private community platform that is exclusive. We have a one platform that's exclusive to the Build a Safe Home students, and they are my VIPs. And so when they ask questions, I'm there. But you're never alone in this process. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is it's so often we wonder, like, who do I ask? Who do I know? I ask my neighbor. I ask this person on Facebook. Be careful on the ones on social media because, yeah, there's a lot of myths on social media. That's actually part of why I started creating this and did my website, was because it was like, whoa, there's like, where are people learning this stuff? Because so much of it isn't true or is slightly true. So I'm mostly in my own groups now because it gets frustrating for me. It's hard for me to watch other people sharing something that I would disagree or challenge what they're sharing. So be very careful. But this is the place to come to know when you should think twice. Here's a testimonial. We have other testimonials on the course page, but this is a different one than yesterday, so I'm going to read it. I have learned so much from Cheryl and her courses. If you are planning to build, her mold safe home course is a must. As a mold survivor, our family is highly focused on water damage prevention. She has taken a topic that can be really challenging for those of us who are not in the building industry and made it understandable. And that's from Lindsay. But check out the testimonials on our testimonial page. Know that I do get people signing up who wish once they get into it, they wish they had done it sooner. So keep that in mind. Don't wait. Now is the time. You're not going to regret it. So now let's just get to your questions. Let's see. I see there's questions about waterproofing mistakes or whatever other questions that you have. Okay, so Holly is asking, in the process of building a barn dominium, I'm concerned about thermal bridging. What are your suggestions about the exterior wall materials should be behind the metal? In Central Texas Zone 3, thoughts on R-zip sheathing, rain screen, using rock wool for interior insulation, and using kiln dry wood to build interior living. That's a big question. I don't know, Holly, if you were on the session yesterday, but I did mention all the different kinds of building types that were being built, like barn dominiums and arch buildings and modular buildings and tiny homes. And they all have the same principles. They all have the same requirements for water damage. I mean, you can get something that was built in a warehouse, and if it wasn't waterproof properly, didn't have the right flashing, if it's not put on a proper foundation with site drainage that's going to work well for you, for your site and your climate, then it's going to fail the minute it's outside and exposed to the elements. Barn dominiums can be metal. They can be wood also, structure. So I'm hearing that you are worried about thermal bridging because of the metal, and you should be. Texas is a place where you do a lot of air conditioning, and metal studs, especially metal structure, metal components, will take on the temperature of the air, whatever the air is. So if you're air conditioning your home and you have a lot of metal right behind the drywall, then it's going to be cold. And if you have warm, moist air that's coming into the enclosure and it's not airtight, then it will condensate on that metal and it'll drip, just like your glass of lemonade on your picnic table in the summer. So that's what thermal bridging is. Thermal bridging is where one material is taking on the temperature of another. One material that does not have as much thermal bridging, except around the edges, would be wood. Because think about it, if you're going to go watch a soccer game, or how about a football game this time of year? It's really cold outside. Do you want to sit on a concrete bench, a steel bench, or a wood bench? Does anybody know? Like, what would you guys say to that? I want to sit on the wood bench because wood has an R value. There's air entrained in the cells of the wood. Now that the wood's dried, what was water is now air. And steel is very conductive. It's going to be super cold. Concrete's going to be super cold. And so and that's the reason we cook with metal pans, and the handle might be wood so that we can grab the handle and not burn our hands on the metal pot. Concrete, we don't make concrete pots, partly because of the weight, but also because it's not as conductive, but it still is. You know, we talk about frying an egg on the sidewalk. So the challenge whenever we use metal structure is condensation. And it's especially a challenge in a climate that has high humidity. So that's all I can really say about that in particular. I'd have to look at your details, but I don't recommend spray foam. And that's a solution that a lot of builders are suggesting to be airtight. But know that spray foam decouples from every substrate, wood or metal. And so we end up with these tiny air cavities, and there's plenty of people online, if you pay attention to the reels and videos people are posting, that are showing the air currents moving through spray foam or having in gaps of spray foam. So I'd be cautious about using metal framing in Texas. Know that mold grows on every material. Steel studs do rust and they can turn into nothing. I have pictures of that. And actually, I think you might see those pictures in the Moisture Matters webinar that's included as a bonus. That'd be a really good place to start. Zip sheathing, personally, I wouldn't use it. And nobody sponsored me to do anything else. I can tell you that. But I am seeing more and more damage with zip sheathing because of the complexity in the attachment. And every nail that you put in, if it's overdriven, it exposes the wood, and now your continuous water resistive membrane isn't continuous anymore. So I think it's better to use some sort of an applied, whether it's a Tyvek or a VaproShield, and there's all different kinds of products. But I would get one that has a high perm rating. We do have a class on permeability and vapor barriers, so you can understand that. I don't have time to go into that's another half an hour that you could watch on that topic. But yeah, I'm not a big zip system. It's easy, but it's so easy also to forget or to overlook flashing details. And your flashing details with zip system is tape, managed with tape. You must use a roller, and people don't do that. There's ways to have fish hook leaks in those. And so you're relying on a tape attachment in a hot climate that is never going to unstick. And so I prefer mechanical flashing, which means one thing goes over another so that if the tape fails, it still works. Same thing with the caulk. If the caulk were to fail, it still works. So using Rockwool is great. I like Rockwool. But Rockwool in between steel studs, there is I think it's Oak Ridge National Lab, and I definitely have a presentation on this. I'm not sure if it's in the Moisture Matters webinar or not, but your overall R value, if you have metal studs that are taking the temperature, whether it's cold from outside or cold from inside in air conditioning, and you put insulation in between the studs, and the insulations are 19 and you have metal studs, your effective wall insulation is more like R10 because of the transmittance of the metal studs transmitting cold either inside or outside. And then the air conditioning, you're only insulating between those. So that's something good to know. I have no problem using kiln dried wood. I do recommend to everyone that follows me to use kiln dried wood to 15, moisture content 15 rather than 19. And you will probably have to pre-order that. It is available. And I'm on I'm on the American Lumber Standards Committee as the architect representative. I keep asking about it, and they tell me nobody's asking for it. So if we start asking for it, then they'll start having it more and more available. But I would definitely ask for it and try to order it. You may have to go to your wholesaler. So all really good questions, Holly. And the course would be a great place for you. All right. Our next question is D. Have you found issues with solar panel installation in the roof leaking? Yes. Yes. If you're building new and you also will have high EMFs during the day when the sun is shining. It won't be a problem at night, but during the day you'll have super high EMF. So my research, two things. If you want to put them on your house, I would put them on your garage. And I would do it when you're building the roof initially, or when you're roofing your roof initially in new construction, so that you can put in the supports for the solar panels and you can waterproof around those before you put the shingles on. So you won't have the panels on, but you'll have the supports and you can really manage your moisture there. there is a lot of damage. People who talk about it, if you find them online, are people who do repairs on solar panels, where people think there's nothing really, that there's nothing going to happen if they go put a bunch of holes in their roof to support solar panels. You know, big problem. So I would only do solar panels if you're re-roofing your house, and then that you could put the brackets on as part of the underlayment that you're doing for your roof, and really make sure that that's waterproofed well, and then do your shingles around it. Really good question, Deirdre. Really big problem all over the place. So, and then for EMFs, like I said, over a garage or an outbuilding, or if you have a lot of property, you can, put them on out in your yard on stands. But I have a metal trailer with solar panels on it, and I try not to go in there during the day because, yeah, I've measured the EMFs. They're really high. They're really, really high. So, all right. So, looks like Nikita is asking, what about a company like Unity Homes through Bensonwood that I think uses zip sheathing, but does so in a warehouse with machines? Is the tape for flashing actually effective? Is it vulnerable to unsticking or being chewed by rodents or anything? Could you use it with wire mesh to prevent intrusion? I do know of Bensonwood and Unity Homes, and I think they're doing really interesting work. I don't know of their details. I have never had a client that had them. I do think they're on the right track because they speak at conferences for architects, and so I've seen some of their conferences. And Bensonwood does heavy timber, and I did build a heavy timber house myself for my house. They may be using zip system, and they may not know that some of the problems that can happen. I would hope that they're following manufacturer's instructions, especially if they're building it in a warehouse. But this is where it's like, can you tell? There is a way to tell if the tape has been rolled. It's not just putting on the tape, because the surface of the zip has a texture to it. So the installer actually has to buy this roller. Everybody who's doing it has to who's putting the tape on should really have one. And they have to roll it really, really hard so that you can see the texture of the panel through the tape. So this is a quality control thing where, if somebody has having a bad day, they could miss a spot. Or you know how tape is, if you're wrapping a present and you accidentally touch something you didn't mean to touch, and now you had to pull it off and it's not going to stick there, or you stick the tape down and now you got a wrinkle. Those wrinkles can leak. So it's not as easy as you think. Now, maybe they're doing it with machines. I actually don't know. I would love to go to, if you know anybody there, I'd love to be invited to go for a tour of what they're doing. And I'd love to know more about what they're doing. In theory, zip system, is really interesting. I'm just fine. I've known about zip sheathing since I started working for the wood industry in 2008. And yeah, it was, it's really exciting, a lot of that stuff. But I am seeing projects now, and forensic architects who are taking buildings apart are posting some of on the outside where they 5 years in, and they can just pull it away by the handful. And it's incorrectly installed. It's not a fault with the product. It's not a fault with the system. It's a fault with human beings that miss something. And so is it so machine driven that there cannot be a mistake? I don't know. But I do think that if you use their tapes and you do all their details, which includes taping the seam at the bottom to the foundation, and I guarantee you they're not building these homes on the foundation in your warehouse. So we have that complexity of now we're building something in a warehouse, and it has to go out and has to end up on a foundation. And so there's some flashing and sealant and tape that would happen there. And does that get done right on the job site? And that little piece could cause problems even though you did everything else right. So it's a really challenging, as I said, buildings are really, really challenging. In terms of rodents, rodents will chew through just about everything. We did at one point have squirrels that had gotten in something. I don't know if it was a garage or something, but we tried to get them out. And my husband actually built a wooden trap to catch them, and then he would take them to a park because we're trying not to actually kill anything. And there was one time where he caught a squirrel, and but he had to go do something else. And so we didn't get to go drive it to the park right away. And the squirrel is in this box, wooden box, like an OSB of zip, or like even plywood. It might have been plywood, what we had. And the squirrel was chewing his way out. So they can definitely chew their way in and chew their way out. I've seen mice get into buildings, and any of those rodents, if they can get in your building, basically their urine and their feces are so toxic. We think mold is toxic. This is really toxic too. And basically in a completely different way. But I did have a situation where in my own house where we had a place where mice had gotten in, and behind the drywall, actually, well, we ended up removing the drywall because there was a stain on the drywall. It was behind in a closet and nobody had seen it. And all of a sudden I was like, what's that weird stain? And we did what everybody would ordinarily do, which I don't actually recommend, but we did it too. Paint it with Kills and see if you could just paint over it. And truth be told, we did that and it came back and it didn't cover it. And so then it's like, okay, we have to do actually what I recommend my clients to do, which means we have to cut it open and we have to look. And my daughter, actually, it was my daughter's room, and she she said, Mom, I think there's something going on in my room because I feel like I'm having a little bit of a reaction. She didn't live there anymore full time. And sure enough, we took it off, and there was a path through the insulation that some mice had decided was a good idea to follow and hang out, it appears. And the stain on the outside was where they peed on the inside, on the back side of the drywall. And it was completely dry, but there was mold growing in the pee. So in the urine stains. So yeah, I hope nobody's eating lunch. I know this is getting close to lunchtime. Sorry about that. But yeah, insects, birds, another one that they can chew through a soffit and a fascia. And yes, in those cases, you end up needing to use a wire mesh to prevent intrusion. So if you already know that's possible, but things like woodpeckers and they're pecking on a building, that's because there's bugs, because there's water, usually. So really good questions. That was a long one. All right, our next question is from Laura. I know it's still early in their process, but what are your thoughts on GeoShip homes? This came up in my last Q&A. I think it was our January Q&A, this came up. And so I know all about this. So guess what? GeoShip Homes, look up Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was an architect, and in 1909, I believe, he designed the geodesic dome house. So it's not new. Geodesic domes are not new. And like many architects, and Frank Lloyd Wright would be another one, there's a lot of defects over time in these buildings. And in that presentation, which is in the recording, it's the only place that you'll ever find that one, is it's a recording in that Q&A session from this month in our Dwellwell Institute. And I found a picture. I think God leads me where I need to go. I was searching around on geodesic domes because I've seen a lot of my clients that had them that had mold. And I was searching around and I found this guy doing a video on one that was for sale. And then I ended up finding the listing on Zillow, and I could look at all the pictures, and it was horrific, really horrific. Actually, I might be doing a presentation on that in the future because I found some more pictures later. But think about it. So one of the concepts that I promote is that you have good drainage away from your home, right? That was number one. Talking about the foundation. Look at every dome home, and they're usually pretty flat. But also let's think about the roof. I also recommend big overhangs on your roof. Are there any big overhangs on any kind of a geoship or a geodesic dome or any kind of an arch building? No. We take all the water that hits the building and we're going to dump it right next to the foundation. Am I right? So, and the other thing we have then we end up with really high humidity in these places. And then because humidity goes to the top, and what geodesic homes have done is they've created a pergola at the top. And the same thing would be true of round barns, where this is a thing. I went to undergrad in Illinois, and there was a round barn there. And at the top of the barn is basically a cupola, maybe is a better word for it, where there's a place for the air to go out. And because you put animals in there, they're all breathing. There's all this moisture and steam coming out of their breath. And all that warm, moist air would go to the top, and it would be really moldy in there. And the houses that I've had that are dome homes, especially geodesic domes, have had mold at the top because there's no way to really vent that. And it's not like this is rocket science and people don't know this. Like I said, those round barns are very, very old. It's common sense that if you're going to have warm, moist air and that air is going to collect in a part of the building, then it's going to end up bringing moisture there and causing mold. So when you have a building where the ground, the roof is just flooding the foundation and all around the foundation, you have a big challenge, really big challenge. So, yeah, actually, that was a really good question, Laura. And we're thinking about pulling that question out and making it its own little thing. But Geo, it's really interesting. The products that they're doing is interesting. They look cool, but they're not new. It's not new. Buckminster Fuller, 1909. You can look it up. He's in Wikipedia. Will tell you all about him and show you pictures. So Nikita has another question. Oh, that they have open tours very frequently, even just for the public at their warehouse in New Hampshire. I have to figure out how I can do that. So, yeah, I'm speaking at the Weston A. Price Foundation conference. I just recently got invited in October next year in Washington, D.C. So maybe I'll have to turn that into a trip to New Hampshire. So thanks for sharing that. Does anyone else have any other questions to share or to ask? I guess I should say. Those are all really good. And so we're at our 1 hour mark, so I don't want to keep you longer than need be here. But I want to just close up and say, tomorrow's our final day, and we're going to reveal mistake number 1 tomorrow, which means in my book, my most common mistake that's being overlooked everywhere, very commonly. It's the biggest mistake because it affects literally every other decision you make in the process. So that's my clue. Most homeowners don't even know this is something they should be thinking about. And many designers, especially those that aren't architects, don't know it's important. They may never do it. And they may tell you that, oh, I never do that. We don't need to do that. Why should you pay me to do that? Well, I'm going to tell you why tomorrow. So, but that's what makes it so dangerous, is because it's overlooked so much, and because it connects everything together. So we'll have more time for Q&A again tomorrow. So bring more questions. If you're building or renovating, the Build a Safe Home course is where we cover all of this in much, much more depth, with pictures, with diagrams, with images, with links, and my resources of where I find this information. A lot of this information isn't off the top of my head. There are very smart people that are researching all this, but I put it all together based on the things that I see. And then I'll tell you, okay, the government, some government website says this, it's all good, 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 until we get here and say, no, not that part. Don't do that one part. Because it's a lot of lessons learned. And I'm out there seeing buildings and their mistakes and seeing what happens. And a lot of it, some of it is, I didn't even know this was going to happen. And I might have suspected it, but now I'm seeing it. For instance, slab foundations with laminate flooring, carpeting, carpet pad, that's becoming a big source. So anyway, Build a Safe Home. We cover all this in more depth. It's not just what details matter. It's definitely not what materials matter. We do want to pick quality materials, but any material can be done well or poorly. We want to know what details matter, but also why those details matter and how to make sure those details are done correctly. That may be the biggest challenge of all. But there are ways to do that. And first, it starts with us knowing what they are. So the doors are open to our course right now, and students are ready in our private group. I'm just going to tell you that I am offering, this is not part of our original program. We're not going to be advertising that. So because you're here today, you will know about it. And those of you that are watching on the recording, read your emails really closely, because it's going to be in there too. All right. So the link again is in the comments. We've discovered two major mistakes right now these past 2 days. If you're having aha moments or the light bulb moments like I did when my daughter was sick and at that CEU presentation, but make sure you're sharing this information with other people who are building or who are dealing with mold issues. We all know them. I mean, I talk to people in a grocery store line and they ask what I do and I tell them, they say, oh, my sister has that in her house right now. So my mission primarily is to create awareness, is to grow awareness of this problem, and so that we can fix it. That's how we create change. This is an up from the bottom up movement to create change. I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow for the number one mistake. And that will be our last day for this series, but I look forward to seeing you there. Take care. And remember, details matter, and you can still share this with your friends. So I'll see you tomorrow.